I'll talk about it this way. When you are wiping data from a computer, if you just hit delete, the information's still there.
Yeah.
The best way to do it is to write zeros all across the memory and then ones and do kind of this double wipe sort of thing.
Okay.
I feel that kind of happened with women in history. Okay, because you kind of had some actual chauvinistic type historians.
Yes.
Right? Where the role of women was completely downplayed in history. The classic thing, talking about Viking burials. If a skeleton was found with jewelry, it was a woman. If it was found with weapons, it was a man. And if it was proven somehow that the skeleton with weapons was indeed a woman, those were no longer weapons, those were kitchen implements. And so there was this kind of like first pass whitewashing of history by some actually, male chauvinist type historians. But then what happened is, based off of what they did, the rest of the world kind of assumed that all of history was that chauvinistic, right? Yeah. And so we almost got this second pass where first we kind of wiped out the women and then we wiped out everyone who wasn't chauvinistic, at least in the minds of the people. And so there's this idea that all of history has been this patriarchal, iron-fisted, oppressed women. And that was all of history. But yeah, you get into some of the individual stories. If you can get past those two obstacles, if you will, you actually start seeing them pop up everywhere. That was actually one of the issues we had with having this episode was choosing.
Yes.
Because, there was actually a lot. And a lot of them weren't, the big names. I was surprised by how many women there were in the American Civil War. There was lots of them. It was actually a relatively common practice because at the time, the story we know is that you had young men who were too young to sign up for war who would lie and say that they were older so they could join the fight. Well, then there were women pretending to be those young men lying about their age to fight in the war. So that was that little double deception. And pretty much unless they were wounded, a lot of them served the entire war.
Yeah, there was one author that wrote in the early 1600s that there were so many young women serving in disguise in the British Army that they should have their own battalions. It was such a common practice actually because of the misogynistic mindset of the day. Women were considered too weak. They were, specifically consigned to very specific roles in society. But if you were a young woman who didn't have family or didn't have education or didn't know a trade or an acceptable trade, well, then your options were extremely limited to things that were unpleasant or very dangerous. And so a lot of women would disguise themselves and go into the military. And we are going to talk about one of those later on in the episode. But because of some of these chauvinistic and misogynistic practices, there were actually a lot of women who saw the military as a way of getting ahead, as a way of distinguishing themselves. A real-life Mulan story, and apparently it happened all the time.